speaking of that Sixers team, they are in the playoffs. And a big part of that is because they tanked. They tanked pretty badly in the past. And while tanking is often discussed in terms of being a, quote, strategy, Jeff Van Gundy begs to differ.
I love this.
Here's what he had to say about it. What's going on in the NBA right now is a scandal. That because the media believes it's a strategy versus a scandal, it gets reported like a strategy.
Preach.
No one plays in these games. And unless... I think there's more.
Wow.
But I don't know if we're going to show you the more. You come out and say it like Mark Cuban did, and he got fined for it, that we're better off losing than winning. Everybody just winks at each other. He always is good for a good quote.
But listen, that and it, acknowledges it's okay. Finishing up the quote. That's from the SI Media podcast. I was just reading it this morning. He's so right, and I've been saying it forever, but people aren't going to listen to me the way they're going to listen to Jeff Van Gundy because he's a longtime coach and he's the voice of the NBA on ESPN and ABC. But it is a disgrace. I mean, it is absolutely a disgrace that we have incentivized losing to the extent that we have in all sports. And I think there was a time, I remember Adam Silver said this on my show on Mike and Mike years, about a year ago. He said there was a time in the NBA where teams would recognize that it was bad for the league, and they had sort of a sense of community, that it was bad for the league for them to do this. So even though losing might have been, there was incentive in losing, they wouldn't have done it. Now teams are just blatantly tanking. We've called it the process in Philadelphia, like this is charming.
Branding,
it's
greedy.
disgraceful. There's a lot of different ways to do it. And ultimately, I blame the leagues. I blame baseball, football, and basketball. You should never incentivize losing. Losing a game should never, ever, under any circumstances, be better than winning a game.
So then why aren't they changing it? If we all agree that it's not great and the product it suffers as a result.
Because the original concept was that that's the way that bad teams are going to get better. That you want to have some level of parity in your sport, so you're going to give the best players to the worst teams, and that will keep that recycling. But people are smart, and they have figured out now how to game that system. They found a loophole in the system, which is, oh, great, we'll be as bad as we possibly can, while still charging the same ticket prices and everything else. To me, it's horrendous. I don't blame the teams who do it. It's taking advantage of the rules. They need to change the rules.
I feel like there's just not enough superstar players in the league to really. That's why teams tank, because there are not enough of those guys to really elevate your program. You see when these guys coming in, there's really like a couple elite guys that a Ben Simmons type guys that can really elevate your program. So there's a flaw in like the draft system, the draft lottery system, where I don't know what they have to do necessarily, but they need to fix that system in order to try to keep these bad teams honest late in the year.
What are the ways? I'm sorry, B. You just said there are ways.
Like, if you don't make the playoffs, you incentivize still winning. Okay, so you didn't make the playoffs, but you still had the best record of teams that didn't. Maybe you give them the better option at the lottery balls instead of giving the guy at the very bottom.
I just hate as a player, like, to me, and this goes not just NBA, but all sports, the number one thing you have to do is build a winning culture. How do you build a winning culture when you're just losing year after year after year? The Sixers lucked out. They lucked out, but every team, it doesn't work for every team. How do you build a winning culture that way?
But I'm sorry, Jay, I'll let you go. But I mean, the Astros did it, and they won the World Series, and they look like the best team in the sport. And the Cubs did it, and they won a World Series, and they look like they're going to be there for the foreseeable future. It can work if you do it right, and that to me is a bigger problem. If it never worked, people would stop doing it. But it can work, and that's why people do it.
Well, it's a lot to unpack. First, you start with the league. As you mentioned, you can't incentivize teams to lose. I think the best way to do it is all of the teams that are in the lottery should have the equal opportunity to get the number one pick. That's how you eliminate it, first and foremost. Second, what has changed in the game is usually all-stars were spread throughout the league. Now all-stars are joining one another to create super teams. The other thing is players now, for the first time, have heard an owner, Mark Cuban, tell them, we are trying to lose. That has never happened before. Usually it was inherent by the team that they were putting on the floor, like the Memphis Grizzlies did this year. And lastly, the Philadelphia 76ers are a perfect example for the media, how we have to separate being fans and judging a result versus the integrity of the game and celebrating the process. Because just a few years ago, I saw online somebody selling Sixers tickets, 2 rows for like $75.
Woo!
Okay, so now
you can't get
since
one.
they have Joel Embiid, since they have Ben Simmons, we're going to now tout that as the success The process was a success, but it's still terrible for the game. Resting healthy players and not suiting up your best lineup, putting them in a position to win on a nightly basis.
100% agree. Okay, good conversation, and we'll do more of it as we go.